A senior Hamas spokesperson has suggested both Israel and the US were responsible for the termination of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. An Israeli government spokesperson has suggested that actions by Hamas caused the termination in a temporary ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Israel resumed its offensive in Gaza, accusing Hamas of violating the 7-day truce deal to free all women held hostage in Gaza. Activists outside the summit in Dubai for international climate talks compared the current Israel-Hamas war with the fight for action over climate change. Explosions and billowing smoke could be seen on the Gaza skyline following the expiry of a week-long truce between Israel and Hamas militants. Israelis woke up to the news that fighting had resumed in Gaza after a week-long truce gave way to the resumption of combat. Bodies were brought to the Al-Aqsa hospital in the central Gaza Strip as Israeli airstrikes resumed after their ceasefire with Hamas militants expired. People in the Gaza Strip were reacting to the resumption of the Israel-Hamas war as a temporary ceasefire came to an end. A body was pulled from the rubble of a destroyed building in Khan Yunis as Israeli warplanes resumed airstrikes on the Gaza Strip after their ceasefire with Hamas expired. Israel released another group of Palestinian prisoners hours after Hamas freed additional Israeli hostages under a last-minute agreement. Various ambulances arrived with injured people to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis as Israeli strikes resumed. The Interior Ministry in the Hamas-run territory said that airstrikes hit southern Gaza, including the community of Abbasani. Footage released by Al-Qassam Brigades, the military wing of Hamas, showed Israeli hostages being handed to the International Committee of the Red Cross. Israeli security forces fired tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse Palestinians gathered in the West Bank town of Bitunia to welcome prisoners released from Israeli jails. The armed wing of Yemen's Houthi rebels threatened to escalate its attack against Israel if the ceasefire ends and Israel continues its offensive in the Gaza. Hamas freed 8 Israeli hostages in exchange for the release of more Palestinian prisoners under a last-minute deal to extend their ceasefire in Gaza by another day. The White House condemned a deadly attack by 2 Palestinian gunmen on people waiting for buses along a main highway entering Jerusalem, saying the attack was a stark reminder of the enemy Israel is facing. Jordanian King Abdullah II said that the climate action must not leave behind vulnerable communities and underscored the increased vulnerability of Gaza residents amid the ongoing war. Explosions and smoke could be seen over the Gaza Strip as fighting in the latest Israel-Hamas war resumed after a week-long truce expired. The Israeli military says 6 Israeli hostages have been released from captivity in the Gaza Strip. The army said that Red Cross transferred the hostages to Egypt. UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan met Israeli President Isaac Herzog at COP28 in Dubai. Herzog asked bin Zayed to help in release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. The Russian military is building training grounds on Ukraine's territories, Russia's Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said at a meeting with top military officials. Ukraine's President Zelensky said that the war with Russia was in a new stage, with winter expected to complicate fighting after a summer counter-offensive that failed to produce desired results due to enduring shortages of weapons and ground forces. Hungary will not support any European Union proposal on the revision of the EU budget and to begin talks on making Ukraine a member of the bloc, a government minister said. Russia's Supreme Court effectively outlawed LGBTQ+ activism, the most drastic step against advocates of gay, lesbian and transgender rights in the increasingly conservative country. Ukraine's president visited Kupiansk, an area of active hostilities in the Kharkiv region. Zelensky met General Syrsky, the commander of Ukraine's ground forces. Russian missiles tore through apartment buildings in eastern Ukraine's Donetsk region, killing at least 1 person and burying families under rubble as the Kremlin's forces continue to pound the fiercely contested area with long-range weapons. Ukraine's foreign minister said that he believed the poisoning of the wife of Ukraine's intelligence chief was an attempt on her life by Russia. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken spoke about the conflict in Ukraine, the Israel-Hamas war, and the ensuing humanitarian crisis in Gaza in Brussels. Russia is not a threat to Finland, and its activities to ensure border security are absolutely excessive, as per the Kremlin spokesperson at a conference call with journalists. Ukraine's president attended a meeting with military commanders during a visit to the Odessa region, which has been a target of several Russian attacks. Antony Blinken arrived at Al Maktoum International Airport in Dubai, UAE, to attend international climate talks. Blinken flew to Dubai from Israel, where he left shortly after the truce between Israel and Hamas expired and the war resumed. Japan suspended flights by its Osprey aircraft the day after a U.S. Air Force Osprey based in Japan crashed into the sea during a training mission. The Philippines inaugurated a new Coast Guard monitoring base on an island occupied by Filipino forces in the disputed South China Sea and plans to expand joint patrols with the U.S. and Australia to counter China's pure bullying in the strategic waterway. The joint maritime patrols conducted by the Philippines and Australia have heightened tensions in the South China Sea, China's Ministry of National Defense said. China welcomes businesses from across the world to invest and cultivate success in the country. And Wong's statement came when asked to comment on a report released by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called on world leaders to take decisive steps to combat climate change in order to protect those most vulnerable. China's first unmanned maritime helicopters were commissioned in Weihai City, East China's Shandong province. Cuban President Miguel Diaz-Canel criticized developed countries during his speech at international climate talks in Dubai. Britain's King Charles III warned of a starker and darker world as he called for action in fighting climate change while addressing world leaders at international climate talks in Dubai. World leaders were gathering for discussions on tackling climate change in Dubai at the COP28 summit. The Middle East plays host to its second straight UN climate conference, with countries hoping to agree on new ways to keep the planet from heating too much by the end of the century. UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said Britain was tripling its climate adaptation finance, pledging £1.6 billion of support for clean energy and innovation at the COP28 summit in Dubai. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for action as he said Earth's vital signs are failing during a speech at international climate talks in Dubai. Flight KR 9755, operated by Cambodia Airways, arrived in Sanya, South China's Henan province, from the capital of Cambodia. The flight will head to Singapore after a stopover in Sanya, and the Nomne Sanya Singapore route is Henan's first airline passenger route under the 5th air traffic right, which allows an airline to carry traffic from its home country to a second country before reaching a third country, opened by Henan Free Trade Port. Artificial intelligence is one of Shanghai's 3 leading industries, and robots are known as the crown jewel of the manufacturing industry. Diversity and inclusion was a hot topic at the launch of this year's Red Sea Film Festival. The event kicked off on Thursday in Saudi Arabia. A 196-meter long and 35-meter wide bridge on a high-speed railway completed a sweepable morning in Xiamen, East China's Fujian province. The Bailun-2 bridge linking the city of Dongxing in China and the city of Mong Khai in Vietnam opened for passenger transport. China informed its third aircraft carrier, the Fujian, is undergoing mooring trials. Taylor Swift walked the black carpet at the London premiere of Beyoncé's new concert movie Renaissance, a film by Beyoncé.